For decades, Vince Gill's voice has met people in their quietest moments. It's the voice behind Go Rest High on That Mountain, a song that doesn't try to explain grief, but sits beside it. With more than 20 Grammy Awards and a reputation as one of country music's most respected artists, Gill has never chased attention. His legacy was built slowly, through honesty, restraint, and a rare emotional openness. What many listeners don't realize is how deeply personal that tenderness is. It didn't come from success or acclaim, but from a lifetime of loss, patience, and deliberate choices. Vince Gill's career isn't defined by loud statements or dramatic reinventions. It's shaped by what he endured quietly and what he chose not to do when easier paths appeared. His music carries a kind of calm wisdom, the kind earned only by living through heartbreak and continuing to show up with grace. To understand Vince Gill's songs is to understand the life that shaped them, the childhood loss that changed everything. In 1968, Vince Gill was an 11-year-old boy growing up in Norman, Oklahoma, surrounded by family, music, and routine comfort. His father, a federal judge and devoted amateur musician, often played alongside him, encouraging his early love for guitar. That sense of safety shattered when Vince's older half-brother, Bob, was involved in a devastating car accident. Bob survived, but after months in a coma, he emerged with severe, permanent brain damage. He could no longer speak, care for himself, or connect in ways the family once knew. For young Vince, it was a loss without closure. His brother was physically present, yet emotionally unreachable. Watching his parents grieve quietly left a deep imprint on him. That experience introduced Vince to a kind of sorrow that doesn't announce itself. Bob lived for another 25 years in that condition, and when he passed in 1993, the grief resurfaced fully, shaping Vince's emotional language forever. Turning grief into gentle truth. When Bob passed away in 1993, Vince Gill was already an established artist, but fame didn't dull the pain. That same year, he released a Christmas album that carried unexpected emotional weight. One song, It Won't Be the Same This Year, captured a grief that began long before death. The song speaks to absence, to the quiet realization that someone is gone, even while still alive in memory. Vince later shared that every time he performs it, he sees himself as that 11-year-old boy again, trying to understand loss. This ability to translate deeply personal pain into something universally felt became one of his greatest gifts. Vince never used grief as spectacle. He treated it with care, allowing listeners to recognize their own stories within his. That early tragedy shaped his songwriting voice, giving it patience, empathy, and a refusal to oversimplify pain. His music learned to listen before it spoke, walking away from the obvious dream. By the late 1980s, Vince Gill was respected in Nashville, but not yet a star. He had talent, strong albums, and admiration from fellow musicians, but commercial success remained modest. Then came an offer that could have changed everything overnight. Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits invited Vince to join the band at the height of their global success. It was a rare opportunity. International tours, massive audiences, and immediate recognition. Vince seriously considered it, then declined. His reason was simple but profound. He knew that joining Dire Straits would mean setting aside his own voice before he'd fully found it. The decision wasn't easy. There were years of doubt, financial strain, and second-guessing, but Vince believed that authenticity mattered more than scale. He wanted to tell his own stories, even if it took longer. That choice reflected the core of who he was becoming, an artist willing to wait for meaning instead of rushing toward applause. When patience finally met its moment, Vince Gill's long gamble paid off with the release of When I Call Your Name. The album didn't rely on trends or production tricks. It leaned entirely on vulnerability, restraint, and emotional clarity. The title track, aching and understated, resonated deeply with listeners and earned Vince his first Grammy Award. Suddenly, the artist who had patiently stayed the course found himself recognized, not just for skill, but for sincerity. The success wasn't explosive, it was lasting. Vince had arrived on his own terms. Looking back, he often said he'd rather be himself in a small room than someone else on a massive stage. That philosophy guided every chapter that followed. Fame didn't change his values, it confirmed them. He had proven that integrity could still find its audience. The songs that mattered most were the ones rooted in lived experience, and listeners responded to that truth with loyalty that spanned generations. A love story that took its time. Vince Gill met Amy Grant in the early 1990s during a holiday television special. Their connection wasn't dramatic or immediate. It was gentle, grounded in kindness and mutual respect. Both were married at the time, and both were navigating private struggles in their relationships. Over the years, they crossed paths professionally, forming a musical partnership that felt effortless. Eventually, as their marriages ended separately and thoughtfully, public speculation followed. The scrutiny was especially intense for Amy, whose career was closely tied to faith-based audiences. Through it all, Vince remained quiet, refusing to defend himself in headlines. He believed truth didn't need constant explanation. When they married in 2000, the ceremony was small and personal, focused on commitment rather than image. Their relationship wasn't born from recklessness, but from patience and honesty. Over time, it became one of the most enduring partnerships in music, built on shared values and deep emotional presence. Honoring a legend without replacing him. When Glenn Frey passed away in 2016, many believed the Eagles' story had ended. The band itself struggled with how to move forward. Vince Gill was invited to join, not as a replacement, but as a steward of the music. He approached the role with humility, spending months learning harmonies and phrasing with precision and respect. Vince understood that his job wasn't to reinterpret the songs, but to protect their spirit. When he stepped onto the stage alongside the Eagles and Glenn Frey's son, Deacon, audiences responded with warmth and gratitude. Vince didn't center himself, he blended in. That restraint earned him quiet praise from bandmates and fans alike. Some criticism surfaced, but Vince didn't engage. He believed honoring music mattered more than winning debates. His presence proved that reverence and skill could coexist, and that legacy isn't preserved by imitation, but by care. Love, tested by illness and responsibility. In recent years, Vince Gill's devotion has been most visible offstage. When Amy Grant was diagnosed with a rare heart condition requiring open-heart surgery, Vince became her constant support, especially during a recovery complicated by isolation and uncertainty. Then, in 2022, Amy suffered a serious bicycle accident that resulted in a traumatic brain injury. Vince immediately canceled performances without hesitation. He didn't frame it as sacrifice, he framed it as love. Throughout her recovery, he remained present, protective, and patient. These experiences reshaped his understanding of partnership, deepening the quiet gratitude already present in his life. Songs he had written years earlier took on new meaning, reflecting resilience rather than romance. Vince has never treated caregiving as heroism. He treats it as commitment. In doing so, he has shown that strength doesn't always perform. Sometimes it simply stays. Writing not for charts, but for meaning now. In his late 60s, Vince Gill continues to write music with no interest in chasing trends. He believes his best work is happening now, not because it's louder or bigger, but because it's truer. His recent songs focus on observation, compassion, and lived experience. He writes to make sense of the world, not to escape it. There's a quiet confidence in that approach, a sense of peace with where he stands. Vince no longer measures success by numbers or awards. He measures it by connection. His music today carries the weight of everything he's endured: loss, patience, love, responsibility, and offers it gently to anyone willing to listen. Vince Gill's story isn't about reinvention, it's about continuity, about choosing honesty over noise. And when he sings now, he doesn't rush the moment, he lets it arrive exactly as it is.